Welcome to MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgianne Lucier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Jill Kovalich, who is a marketing expert, and she is exploring the concept of solo agers. So welcome, Jill. This vast marketing experience, you've worked with different companies, different industries. You've been the outside marketing department for, say, a smaller to medium-sized company. And when did you first notice this trend of people identifying and wrestling with the idea of aging on their own?
Well, Georgianne, I think it really started coming on for me somewhere in my 40s because during those years I worked briefly in marketing for an assisted living.
Okay.
And so I, became very aware of a lot of the aging statistics and, what was happening actually around the world, not just in our country. And I also became familiar with a lot of the people there, residents there, whose children are estranged, and that caused a lot of pain for them. And so I thought, well, I guess it doesn't matter if you have children because they might not be in your life at some point.
Yeah.
So that's I think that started then. And then as I myself have gotten older, when I started getting closer to 60, I started asking questions about life. I'm like, well, gee, what is my life going to be like in 15 or 20 years? I'm not married and I don't have children. So I started kind of dusting off those topics and doing a little research and discovering some very interesting things.
And I believe some of those things were that people expressed, I believe largely on social media was one source, loneliness, some element of despair about the very concept of what life was going to look like for them.
Yes, when I started being drawn toward these topics, I started doing a little research.
Sure.
And I would stumble onto chat rooms on social media or on the internet. And I found a conversation in there that disturbed me. Okay, people were talking a lot about their end of life and how things like, well, I'm alone and who's going to take care of me, or no one will be there, at the end. And it just sounded very despairing to me. And I felt really sad about that. And I thought, this is not how it has to be. I like options. I'm a positive person.
Okay.
So I said, well, there's got to be an alternative here. And that kind of led me into a new direction where I started to do some more research. And it led me towards creating Solo Agers Connect.
Okay. What are some of your plans to address those needs?
Well, what I've done is I've created a business called Solo Agers Connect. It's a limited liability company, and I am building an online hub or a website. And on that site, I want anybody who wants to find the information to go there. There's no membership with this or anything like that. I want people to go there and find information about issues that bother them. I want them to find resources to help them find what they need, and also trusted services, to help them with the day-to-day things that they need. So the information on there is going to be in the form of blogs, and that's up and running today, so you can go in there and look at those. But the blogs are written from research that I do. I go out to the internet and I find information. Okay, I find actual conversations that solo agers are having about things that bother them. And so I write articles about that, and that is what's going up on the site. The resources section is filled with state and local organizations, nonprofit organizations, as well as federal sites, so people can find information for a variety of topics, whether it's from housing to Medicare to health care needs to anything under the sun. And then services, trusted services. People need handymen. They have different needs for estate planning, mobile pet services, all of those types of things. So I wanted to create a one-stop shop where people can go to that and find what they need. And hopefully that will continue to expand and meet their needs. And that's what I'm all about these days.
I believe you're going to be vetting some of the services. So if someone's listed as an elder attorney or a handyman or a mobile pet service.
All good services. What I'm doing is I have to make sure that the businesses that are listed in the services section of the website are trusted.
Yeah.
I set up some criteria that I would use when I'd be looking for someone. I want to make sure they're an established business, they're in good standing, they have good ratings, the reviews are favorable. If somebody needs licenses, I want to make sure those licenses are in good standing, that they are up to date and valid. So those are the types of criteria that I'm looking to make sure that we fulfill whenever I approve a service entity to be listed on the site.
Okay, and I assume they would help kind of fund this whole enterprise by an arrangement you would have with them.
Right.
For recommending
think of
them,
it like
right?
advertising.
Yeah.
Yes, because I want people to go to the site and find what they need, but I do have to pay for it. That's a way to do that, and it's fairly inexpensive for the service providers, and of course it helps them because they get in front of people who they know need their services.
Let's talk about some of these statistics. I mean, first of all, I don't know that a lot of people would necessarily think to identify themselves as a solo ager, right? How would you define that criteria? Basically, without a partner, children?
A solo ager is anybody over 50,
Okay.
who is navigating life without the benefit of having a partner or a spouse. They generally have no children, or if they do have children, they're estranged and not involved in their lives. And generally, people don't have family nearby, or they might have a relative or two that's really far away. But none of these people, would be there and involved in their lives. So that leaves the person to navigate solo. In their lives. I'm a solo ager.
Okay.
I'm not married. I don't have a life partner, and I don't have children. So when I make planning decisions about anything with my household, contracting services, if I need anything at all, estate planning and such, these are decisions I have to make. There's nobody there to who has my back, who can help me with this. So I need to go out and find the answers to all this myself. There was a situation recently, actually. I was coming back home from another town, and it was late at night. It was cold, and I blew a tire on my car. And I thought, gee, can I just get to my, home? And I couldn't. I was able to get off the highway and pull off, have a car service. I had to wait, for an hour for a tow and everything. But you sit there and you're thinking, well, gee, I don't really have anybody nearby I can call, to help me. So I have to solve these problems on my own. So that's kind of a typical situation of somebody who is a solo ager.
Okay. I was watching something on YouTube, and a person in the travel industry was being interviewed and said that solo agers, I'm sure, and perhaps people younger as well, that's an upcoming trend. People traveling on their own, a lot of women, and, I kind of toss that around with you a little bit. Like, that's a very interesting phenomenon. I have some friends who travel, one who's very interested in gardening and hiking, and she's traveled with different groups to, for different destinations, both within the country and outside the country. And I'm aware that some of the cruises you can upgrade to have, your own room or whatever without sharing with a partner. So what have you experienced and learned about that?
Well, it's not surprising that solo travel seems to be the big thing these days.
Okay.
In Connecticut, we have 250,000 people who qualify as solo agers.
Okay.
Just in Connecticut. And the population statistics from my research show we have at least, and this is a conservative number, but at least 16 million solo agers in the U.S. What are they going to do? Go nowhere? Want to travel and have fun. I cannot open my phone, check the weather, or go to social media without having some kind of solo travel advertisement popping up, for me to look
You've been
at.
identified.
Oh,
Someone's
they
got
have
your
me.
profile.
They do. They've got me,
Yeah.
So it's becoming very popular. The thing that I don't like about solo travel is many times when you book a trip, they charge you something called a single supplement.
Right.
Okay. And I was just saying to someone the other day, I said, wait a second.
Wait a minute
if
here.
two people are taking a room, maybe they should charge me half, right?
Right.
That's not how it works. All right. I'm going on a trip, a solo trip, and I like it because they didn't do a single supplement.
Okay.
It's truly, put together so that I'm sure it's built into the cost, but I don't want to see it as a line item,
Yes.
that I'm charged for. I think it calls attention to you traveling alone, and it's an unpleasant little, piece of travel. There are more and more solo travel experiences out there, and they're not just for solo agers, although
Right.
I think that that's probably a good market for it. I do know a few people, women, okay, who have traveled on their own. Their husbands just don't want to travel, and so they're like, I'm going anyway.
Yeah.
All right. And it's worked out well because it's safe, and it's just easy to do, to go, like, sign up for a trip where other people are there.
Yeah.
It just works out pretty well. Yeah.
Tell us about your upcoming trip.
I've signed up to go to Paris for Christmas week.
Nice.
I wanted to be somewhere else for Christmas for a long time, and I found it by accident. The truth is, it found me.
Yeah.
That's how I think things work. Actually, I was doing some research on solo travel, and this popped up, and I thought, gee, I'd love to get back to Paris. Wouldn't that be so fun? And it was Christmas in Paris, and I thought, wow, I got to check this out.
Yeah.
So I looked at that, and this is a particularly small boutique travel experience by a woman who creates travel experiences just in Paris. And this one is Christmas, and I'll be going on from a Saturday to a Saturday. I don't know anybody on the trip.
Okay.
It's very small. There will be about 10 people on it. From what I understand, everybody except possibly 2 people are all solo travelers.
Okay.
We have a little bit planned each day, and then a group dinner on Christmas, which will be lovely.
Yeah.
And but enough free time so I don't come back and need a vacation from my vacation.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
And you've done other solo trips, is that correct?
Yeah, kind of funny. Someone had asked me recently. They said, "Oh, do you do a lot of solo travel? I could never do that." And I said, "Gee, oh no." And then I thought about it, and I thought, something. I think this has been something I've been doing kind of all my life. When I got out of college, I wanted to do a weekend away because I started a job right after I graduated, so I didn't have this week in Europe or something
Right.
that other people take. I went away to a hotel, like a nice resort hotel, by myself for the weekend. Very relaxing and maybe a little odd because you're eating dinner by yourself and things like that. But I also did a lot of travel, corporate travel, especially in my 30s, and I would just go in and then fly home.
Right.
And then I started tacking on a couple of days, and then I would go off and do my own thing. And I'm glad that I did that. It was a good experience. And then last year, I went on a trip to Tuscany. There was a trip sponsored by a chamber, and I signed up, and I figured, what the heck? They charged me a single supplement,
Okay.
but I wanted my own room and all of that. And I thought, well, if I don't have a good time in Italy, then that's my fault.
Right, right.
I mean, how can you go there and not have a good time? But I had a blast. I really did. I never ate dinner alone. I met wonderful people. I had a great experience. And I think having that great experience made it much easier to sign up for Paris. I didn't really plan on taking another trip this year, but I thought, why not? I'm not getting any younger,
Right.
and we're not promised tomorrow. So just go. And it's been very good. You meet wonderful people. You go with an open mind, and travel is always good. It opens you up to so many things. So definitely people should be traveling, and with a solo travel type of experience, like I said, it's safe and it's a great way to travel.
Now, there's 2 parts to solo ager, right? So there's the idea solo and then aging. And what I have learned in doing this show, of course, aging is defined differently depending often on one's point in their own lifespan. As someone that I'm very fond of that was on the show said, Days is always 15 years older than you are, okay? The idea of aging, I believe, is got still so many negative connotations to it. Particularly for women, you think about anti-aging, all kinds of things, right? Creams and treatments, Botox, whatever. Our society, I don't think necessarily supports the idea of all the value of, say, perhaps some other cultures, around wisdom that one gains. But, there are benefits to living long enough to being able to see things unfold, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know how easy it would be for someone to necessarily identify themselves as solo aging and feel good about it, right? Because even solo, I don't know, I'm interested in your perspective, we're kind of, human beings like to be connected, right? And so people tend to partner up or whatever. So have you gotten any feedback or picked up any trends around how people think of those terms?
Yes, it's kind of interesting. I think there is a lot of societal pressure or expectation to be part of a couple.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you're not part of a couple, it does put you in a little bit of a weird sort of zone where you have to navigate through that. And not everybody does that very comfortably. Okay. There is a term that's 2 terms that have been kind of rising. They're not really popular yet, but I think that they will be since the whole planet is aging. One is elder orphan.
Okay.
And that was the first term I came across. And I thought, well, first of all, I don't like that term.
Right.
Okay. And I thought, but, that's kind of creepy term,
Two negatives there in a way.
Yes. And I remember my mother, it wasn't until she was well into her 80s that she finally deigned to be referred to as elder or
Okay.
elderly.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you're right that we never see ourselves as older or as old as we are, maybe. The second part of that is orphan. Orphan means, conjures up the idea of being left behind. And I know plenty of people who are older who are taking care of their parents. So they are elders or solos, but they're not orphans.
Yeah.
All right. And then you have a whole group of people, okay, in the whole range of 50 to, the end.
Right.
Okay, who are vibrant, who are going on trips, are hiking and skiing still and running businesses and doing these types of things. There's a whole range of people. So those people, I don't think, really like the elder orphan label.
Right.
So solo also speaks to things like solopreneur.
Okay.
All right, someone who's an entrepreneur on their own, running their business.
Yeah.
I don't see any negative connotation about that. It's more like, ooh, they're fearless and exciting and
Yeah.
they're blazing a path,
Yeah.
So solo can mean a lot of good things there. Solo travel,
Sure.
is starting to make the word solo, a whole lot more appealing. So aging, there's just a way to put it in that phrase, solo ager. We're all aging,
Sure.
if we live long, we're aging. So you're not necessarily an orphan. You don't feel like an elder. In fact, I perpetually feel like I'm about 36.
Okay.
But I know I don't look 36 anymore, and the numbers are almost, reversed. Truth is, we are living longer. And there are more of us that are living longer. And fewer people are being born. All right. So
Right.
our population statistics, there are a lot of interesting trends going on right now. And this was another thing that, kind of made me sort of look for a solution, because I have a couple of nieces who are married, and each of them has one child, and there's no plan for a second child
Yeah.
or a third or any more at all. So I look at that and think, well, our family is shrinking, but that is right on with the statistics that we're finding across the entire world. Okay. So fewer children are being born. And when you think about what that means in the future, that means they're not going to have siblings. All right. And
Right.
I at least have a sister, that I can count on, although she's older than me. When you have no siblings, you probably don't have very many cousins either. And so you can start to take that forward and think, okay, what does that look like for these solo
Right.
people
Yeah.
who will eventually age? The other part of this is that people are opting out of marriage. I was kidding with someone recently. I said, when I was in my 20s or even my 30s, I said, that stuff wasn't on the menu.
Yeah.
I said, I didn't have these options. I couldn't just live this lifestyle that we accept today. I said, it was not acceptable. I said, I just didn't have these options.
Right.
But today people have a lot of options. And, if they don't want to be married in a traditional marriage and have a traditional family type of lifestyle, believe me, they're opting out of it.
Yeah.
And that's men and women. So who knows what the future will hold for
Sure.
that. So these are a lot of changes and stuff, out there. And if you're going to stay solo and you're going to opt out of marriage and you're not going to have children, well, you'll end up where I am as a solo ager.
Sure.
All right, navigating through life. And that requires planning, for your financing a life on one income
Yep.
is very different from having the benefit of two incomes over a
Sure.
lifetime, building, equity in a house and joint savings and things like that. So there are a lot of different ways to handle that. You just have to plan better. I think.
Because women tend to live longer on average, and they often marry someone 3 years older. At least that was an old statistic, but typically they're the younger if there's an age difference. They suddenly find themselves solo,
Absolutely.
which is a whole new experience. So a lot of the decisions that were being made jointly or maybe made by the partner, that's not the case anymore. So I would think that would be a particular segment that would have particular needs.
Absolutely. I think that you can be married and have children and then find yourself at a point in life where you're no longer married. Either you've divorced, and we've heard often about the gray divorce.
Sure.
People married for decades who then later in life, find themselves divorced and
Right.
single. And you can have children, and the children may or may not be involved in your life. They may or may not live near you.
Right.
You know, so many people I know, their kids are across the other side of the country someplace.
Sure.
So they'll move around. That happens, you know. So you find yourself, you know, having to take care of the house repairs and make decisions and
Sure.
manage finances in a way that you didn't before. You can have a married family life that completely changes as you get older and find yourself being a solo ager.
Sure.
Absolutely. Or lose your partner to death, you know, which is pretty common as well. You
Yeah.
know. I can't cite the source, but I do remember hearing years ago that over 80% of women end up alone.
Okay, we'll go with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we won't do a fact
See,
check
you
on
can just
that.
look around,
Right.
I think.
Your own experience, you talked about your older sister with your parents as they declined and you lost your mom and dad and you were involved with providing services that fit what you were able to do. So you have that experience to draw on, I'm sure, in terms of
Yes, it's
what
a
people
challenge.
are faced with. Yeah.
Yes, definitely a challenge. My sister is a retired nurse. Okay, so she was in charge of all the medical decisions. She's also the older child, so you know they tend to take on all that responsibility. And what's interesting about me and my sister is that we play to our strengths. All right, so my father was healthy for a very long time, and then suddenly had a change in his health, and that was a downward slide over maybe 2 years, and then he passed away. We were very fortunate to have just the universe sort of made this available to us. I had just recently started my business, so I was portable, and I could go and be there. My sister was off. She was a school nurse at the time, and she was off for the whole summer.
Okay.
And so we were able to be there and take care of my father right to the end of his life, which I'm going to tell you was not easy, but it was.
Right.
It's easier than you think to provide care to someone you love.
Yeah.
And my parents were fantastic parents. So to give them back anything, you know, was a privilege,
Right.
you know, and to be with him to the end of his life. So we did that for him. And then my sister went back to work, and then I took care of all the finances and everything, helped my mother with that. So I stayed on for, I think, another month or so. And then my mom was fine for about 3 years, living on her own. And then something happened with her health, and my sister went out to take care of her and didn't come home for a year and a half.
Okay.
This is 200 miles away. Shuttle back and forth, and then eventually we brought my mom to Connecticut, and but we tag teamed very well, and
Okay.
right through the end of her life, you know, gave both my parents dignity, okay, the best possible quality care, allowed them to die peacefully at home, okay, and tried to do anything and everything we could for them. I do it all again without hesitation.
So you have that depth of experience.
Yes.
Yeah, that wisdom gained, right?
Yes, I don't have children, so I don't think I'll be on the receiving end of exactly the same care.
And I have a solo daughter, so yes, I can totally relate to, you know,
Yes.
educational background, public relations, master's in organizational development and training. So all those things help you in being able to think about launching this effort to provide this link to services and information. Thank you for sharing that. What advice would you give your younger self?
How much time do we have? No.
Okay, all right.
I would tell my 26-year-old self, do not get married.
Okay, stop.
Get a job with a big company in Chicago, travel around the country, and have an incredible experience. I think in my 30s, I don't know, I probably, I would say get a mentor.
Okay.
But I also had an opportunity to go to Europe for a job that I had, and I didn't really pursue that. And I think that I would say take that job, go to Europe, live there for a while, and have an extraordinary, life-changing experience.
Anything closer to where you are now?
Find balance.
Find balance.
Find
Boy, isn't
balance.
that the ever elusive? Yeah.
You know,
Dynamic.
I get a great satisfaction out of working, but sometimes I feel like I work most of the time, you know.
Okay.
So I'm very well aware of that, and it does take a lot of work to, you know, launch a new business and
Of
everything.
course.
I get a lot of satisfaction from that, and I'm very productive, and I have all the skills and talents from, you know, and I'm using all of them.
All right,
You know,
and
in
then
what I'm
some,
doing now,
right?
Balance is it always seems kind of elusive, so I'm a little bit better at doing that. I actually can shut down things and just completely relax a little bit. I'm very focused on taking care of my health and well-being, and keeping stress as much as I can at a minimum, which I think is really important.
Okay. And taking a trip to Paris for Christmas
la
is
la.
one nice example, right?
Yes.
You have a favorite quote?
There's one thing, if I would say my mantra
Okay.
is nothing is impossible.
And you are an optimist.
I am.
Yeah, that's super. So thank you so much for being a guest on MidLIFE Matters, and please tune in to hear other fascinating women on future segments of MidLIFE Matters. I'm Georgianne Lucille, your host. Thank you again.